Good morning, everyone. So, wow, we got a lot of people in the room, and we got a lot of presenters on this particular webinar. So, hopefully, for the folks who are on the webinar, they can see us, right, Brian?
Yeah, obviously, anyone has any audio or video issues, certainly reply to chat. Let me know. We think we've got everyone turned on, and we think we've got video for everyone presenting today.
All right, well, let me just tell you a little bit about this webinar, and then I'm going to introduce my co-presenters. So I was having lunch with a client a couple of months ago, and one of them said, I can't remember how it came up, but we started talking about Slack. And she said, we're really interested in Slack, but we don't really quite know how to implement it. And I said, well, it's not just about the technology, it's really about the governance, right? Because you can implement the technology, but unless there's guidance on how to implement it, there's experts in-house, it often doesn't go anywhere. So it gave us an idea to do kind of a tech talk on some of the tech tools that we use. We're going to be showing you just a handful of them and then taking questions, and then hopefully you all will share what you all are using in your organization, or if you have questions for us. So let me go ahead and introduce my co-presenters. I'm Joanna Pineda. I'm CEO and Chief Troublemaker here at Matrix Group. And so that's me. Maki, you want to introduce yourself? Maki's on video. Why don't you wave?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Maki Kato. I'm VP of Engineering at Matrix.
And so Maki is the person who, when we want to try some new tech that is going to be company-wide, he's the guy who we have to convince. Right, Jamie?
Pretty much.
Yep.
So, and I'm here with Jaime Quiroz, who is our lead front-end developer. And Jamie, you want to introduce yourself? Say hi. What do you do?
Yeah, sure. I'm a front-end developer here, the senior guy, I guess. And pretty much I get handed designs and I implement them in WordPress, Affinity, do a lot of cool interactive things on the web. Really enjoy doing that, and that's me.
Yeah, and you use a lot of tools.
Yeah.
You look at the camera so people can see you.
Yeah, I try to. There's a lot to stay up to date with in the front-end development world. So I try my best.
And Maria, want to introduce yourself?
I'm Maria Lima. I've been with Matrix about 19 years now, and I wear a lot of hats. A lot of them are background. I help with the project management and project managers and documentation and security and all sorts of fun things.
Awesome. And Maria uses a lot of the tools, and she's often one of the people who is kind of in charge of making sure that we're using the tools properly. She also helps run our compliance committee to make sure that all of these tools that we're using are really in compliance with the security policies that we have. So, all right, a couple of housekeeping before we get started. Brian, who's the Director of BizDev, is staffing this webinar. And Brian, is everyone muted at this point?
I believe everyone's muted, and I believe if anyone has any questions or need anything, I think you can use the chat function. If I don't reply immediately, just go ahead and send to everyone as opposed to just the new biz room to make sure I see it.
Awesome. Okay, so everyone's muted so that if phone's ringing, dogs barking, kids crying, you can take care of business. But if you've got a question and you want to speak up, we'll unmute you. We will send you within a day or two of this webinar a copy of the slides, although they're not really that many slides. Really, probably the recording is going to be of great interest. Like Brian said, if you have questions, go into the chat. If you're having trouble connecting, you can't hear us something, please send us a chat so we know what's going on. If you have questions after this webinar, we really welcome the questions about these tools because we found them to just be so helpful to us. So you can send them to us by email. You can talk to us on Twitter. You can talk to us on Facebook. And if you'd like to give us some love, on Facebook or Twitter and let us know how we're doing. So, all right. Most of you on this webinar know who we are, but there are maybe half of them who don't, I think, or maybe a little bit less than half. So we are a digital agency. We are based here in Crystal City. We work not exclusively, but almost, majority of our clients are associations and nonprofits. And we help these organizations really solve these main problems. Increase membership or STEM membership decline, increase membership retention with a really compelling set of digital offerings, reach new audiences with a clear brand. We have a lot of clients these days that are rebranding, hence the webinar I did a couple months ago on branding. And also often we help organizations really kind of integrate or streamline their back office. We will sometimes take on projects where somebody will say, we've got members that have 3 passwords, or we've got systems that don't talk to each other. So if you are looking for any of these services, this is how we do it. It starts with a strategy, and then often it involves web design, custom development, mobile app development, hosting. We even have our own association management software called Matrix Mex, which I know some of the folks on the call are using. So again, everything is all about membership, it's all about retention, it's about helping you generate revenue, and it's really helping you to create a really seamless and amazing experience for your members. So if you're looking for maybe a website redesign, or if you're looking for a new membership database, you're looking to tie your systems together, we hope that you'll give us a call. So that was your YouTube ad before the content. So, all right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is password managers. Maki, a couple months ago, said, we should do a webinar on just nothing but password managers. He said, if we get a bunch of people attending this webinar and we talk about password managers and we convince a few of them to implement a password manager for their organization and for themselves personally, we will be successful. Right, Maki?
Yeah. And I don't really know where the threshold is. I know I and we at Matrix handle lots of passwords, so we couldn't imagine our life without it. But I can't imagine it being any different at any other organization. Sort of people are, given or they request accounts or passwords on the behalf of the company. And there's just a whole lot of need for managing passwords in a sensible way, other than, what the alternative might be.
Yeah, so I'm always, I'll ask. We'll say, do you have a password manager for yourself personally? Do you have a password manager for the organization? Sometimes we'll find that individuals will have a password manager personally, but as an organization, I think the vast majority, if not almost all of them, say no. And I'll say this, if you are curious, ask at the next time, you have a staff meeting, ask the staff who's managing passwords for the organization. Probably almost everybody will raise their hand. IT is going to have passwords for, God, you name it, servers, DNS, vendor accounts, software products, subscriptions to things. You've got marketing that's got access to your social media accounts, to your website, to your content management system, to all kinds of things, right? Even something as silly as access to the font library or to the image gallery that you use. You've probably got HR and admin and finance that's got access to stuff. What would happen if any one of those people, walked in front of the proverbial bus, right, and they were out? You just don't want that to happen to the organization. Maki and I both feel pretty strongly that this is a risk for the organization. So what you want to do is implement an enterprise password management system so that all of your passwords, or the vast majority of them, are really in the system, and then you start developing governance or rules around who should have access, when do you enter it, etc. So I'm going to give you an example. We use a product called Secret Server, which we'll show you in a second. And Jaime, what's the rule around here with passwords?
Put everything in Secret Server.
Put everything into Secret Server. It's a pretty simple rule, right? So I had a client who emailed me credentials. They're not really supposed to email us credentials. Usually we'll say, call us with the credentials because we don't want, because email is not secure. But he emailed it to me anyway. It immediately went into Secret Server, and that email was deleted, right? I didn't even want it to be hanging out in my, in my inbox. I didn't want it hanging out in my sent folder since I replied, although I deleted the password. So it's immediately in there, and now we've got a secure way of gaining access to it. If I'm out, Jamie's got access to it because he's got access to this client account. And again, something happens to me, I'm gone for a couple of days, people have access. Maki, you want to talk about why we should have unique passwords on everything?
Yes, but one more thing about the enterprise password managers. It does have the ability to audit. So when somebody leaves the company, it gives you the opportunity to change only the passwords that person has accessed in their tenure. So that's one feature that you don't think about until you actually have one. I couldn't imagine my life without it. But anyway, we're talking about passwords and why you should have different ones. I understand the convenience, and for accounts that I consider totally sort of throwaway and low value, and that has no valuable information in it, I may even consider using a default password that that I used before. The issue is that it's really a matter of time before that password, if you use the same password everywhere, that one of them is going to get compromised somewhere. And then now people have the bad guys have your email address and your password, and they can start trying all kinds of different other sites. And this could just lead to bad things. We had an example recently, Joanna, you can probably touch on that, in fact, this happened to one of our clients.
Yes, so here's what happened. So we had a call from a client that said, hey, we think our server's been compromised because a bunch of staff at this member company said that, hey, they received an email that said that had an attachment, and the attachment had the username and the password to this account. And they said, oh, and these usernames and passwords are, at least the people they checked, are the usernames and passwords that they use on the client web server. So they said, we think there's been a breach on the client web server. So what happens when we get a call like that? We immediately spring into action. We record a security incident. We start taking a look. We start locking things down. We start doing forensics on the server. So hours pass, right? And the client calls us back and says, false alarm. We don't think that it was a compromise from the web server. We think it was from the LinkedIn breach that happened, I guess, a few years ago. And we said, oh, well, why do you think that? Because it turns out that staff who didn't have accounts on the client website, the members only site, also got the email. So we said, okay, Mr. Client, what is making you think that this was a breach on the client, your members only site, and now you're thinking this is actually the LinkedIn breach? And he said, oh, because the passwords were the same. Right? So let's think about this for a second. There were folks at the member companies that were using the same password on this association website and LinkedIn and probably many, many other sites. So what happens if there was a LinkedIn breach, and there was, the bad guys now have username and password combinations that they can try on Amazon and iTunes and Google Play and PNC Bank and, you name it, right? In addition to the association's website. So this is why you never want to reuse passwords. So you're probably saying, well, how the heck am I supposed to remember all those passwords? Hence the password manager, right? So here are, some of the big ones, right? Lastpass, sticky password, KeePass. I was on KeePass personally for the longest time. And then as a family, we switched to Lastpass. And I'll tell you what I love about Lastpass family. It's $48 for the year. It allows me to share the account with up to 4 people, right? So there's 4 of us in the family. We can share secrets or passwords with each other. The other thing that I love about Lastpass that it allows me to do is I can set up a trusted person. So I set up my brother, for example, and obviously my husband, as the trusted person. So if something happens to me and they need access to my passwords, they can request access to my vault, and Lastpass is going to say, well, since you're a trusted person and Joanna hasn't blocked you from accessing her vault within 48 hours, then my trusted people now have access to all my passwords. And let me tell you, as someone who's handling the estate for a friend and not having any passwords, having the passwords to your Gmail, to your bank, to whatever is a huge, huge deal. So if nothing else, set up a personal password manager, set it up so that you can share passwords with your spouse at the very least, as well as a trusted person. The other thing that all these systems do is they will rate your passwords, right? So if you put in a password, they'll say, this is a good password, a great password, a terrible password. They'll also notify you if any of your accounts have been compromised. So for example, I have my LinkedIn in there. If LinkedIn suffers another breach, then I'll get a notification from Lastpass to say, hey, LinkedIn's just been breached. You should change the password.
Hey, Joanna.
Yeah.
So how do you ensure the password managers aren't breached?
So Maki, how do you ensure the password managers aren't breached? I can't ensure that, but Maki, why do we trust Secret Server? Why do we trust LastPass? Jamie, what do you use?
Well, I mean, you're going to store passwords somewhere. A lot of people, what they do, or people that are not so tech savvy, like they'll have an Excel sheet or a document sitting on their computer. How's that any different? Like, you're probably a lot easier to hack than these people who specialize and spend a lot of effort in making their security as, as best as it can be. I don't know, like, whatever you're doing as far as storage, you're vulnerable, and these guys are experts, and those are my 2 cents. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. The specialization part. I can assess it only so much, and different companies have different, technical features. For example, LastPass does all the encryption on the client side. So actually, they don't even hold on the server side the unencrypted password, which is both good and bad. The bad is that, now you have the, on the client side, i.e. in your browser, on your mobile app, inside there somewhere lies the private key to the kingdom, I suppose. It ranges the whole range, right? I mean, you're connected to the internet, so that is the sort of the factor that basically makes it a higher risk. I mean, you could also have a password manager that's not connected to the internet. Some of them, some of the older
you could just keep on your computer. I had it on my computer.
Yep, KeyPass would be one of them, but it doesn't have the features that a mobile app will then provide you. For example, LastPass will, I could create an account using my mobile browser from my cell phone, and it stores the password from that. And then next time I want to use it on my desktop browser, it'll offer me that password, and that's really convenient, and vice versa, right? You create an account on your web, in your web browser, on your laptop, your computer at home or at your work, and then you go to a different place, and you can get that password back. Now, browser sync will also offer something similar to that, but why not trust it to people that specialize in password management? So,
I mean, I think to answer that question, do we have 100% guarantee that these systems aren't going to get hacked? I mean, absolutely not, right? But again, to Jamie's point and to Maki's point, this is their business, and they're reviewed regularly and they're audited pretty regularly. So I have to believe that they're going to have pretty good software. And I think to Maki's point, the benefits are so great. When I got my latest iPhone, I set up LastPass to use Face ID. Oh my God, the best thing ever. I go to a website and it says, you need a password, and it says, hey, you actually have a password for this website. So say I'm going to the Washington Post and it's asking me to re-authenticate. How am I ever going to remember my Washington Post password? Like, who remembers that, right? So LastPass says, hey, I've got a password for this. So I click the button and it says, oh, Face ID, it's you, and it pre-populates that username and password. And so if I had to remember this, it's obviously going to be a lot harder. And even if I was reusing passwords, I'd still have to type it in, right? So the fact that LastPass is pre-populating the password, to me, if that's the only reason that you kind of implement a password manager, that's it alone.
Yeah, and you know what?
Yeah.
And one more thing is that you can make your own assessment as to what you trust and what you don't trust. And ultimately, for example, if you don't want your bank password in there, you could put it somewhere else. You can put it in a device that's offline. You can write it in a piece of paper and save it in your dresser or something like that. You can still be intelligent about what to put where. Just that the point is that there's a whole bulk of passwords that are definitely less secured or less important than your bank account, but has to go somewhere.
Right.
And we recommend that those passwords definitely go into a system.
So
for example, I used to never put my domain credentials in LastPass, and I also still don't do my Google personal password is not in LastPass.
So my domain was not in LastPass, but my Google I cracked. I managed so many Google accounts I cracked, and now they're in LastPass. So this is my LastPass. I'm not going to show you anything.
Yeah, just kind of to append to what
Yeah,
Maki
please.
was talking about real quick. Like really important stuff like bank accounts, right? You know, I kind of sleep somewhat rest assured, even like if they do get hacked and someone has access to my credentials for, you know, my bank account online, I still have two-factor authentication
Yes.
enabled. So like make sure you definitely look into two-factor or multi-factor authentication for anything that's really important. And what that means is that it's an extra layer of authentication that's required to access any given service or login. So definitely do that for anything that's crucial. And with that extra layer of security, you know, it's fine to at least, you know, say, okay, well, my credentials are in there in LastPass, but, you know, they can't really do anything with that unless they have the 2FA that I can access.
And you make a good point. And so we wanted to talk about Duo. So Maki, there are different types of authenticators, right?
Yeah, and Duo is, the main selling point is far beyond just an authenticator, but it does have an authenticator built into it. Duo does allow enterprises to integrate two-factor into, for example, accessing the domain, which is why we started using it.
So whenever we can here at Matrix Group, we require that the staff use two-factor authentication. And again, just to explain that, what does it mean? When I'm logging into my Gmail, right, I type in my username and password, and even if, you know, Brian was a bad guy and had it, it would say, hey, you got to type in the code that we just sent to your phone, or you got to type in the code that we sent to your email, or you got to use an authenticator, right? That's trusted, that's connected to that to allow it, right? So Gmail has an authenticator. We use Duo as a company. So if we're trying to get into our password manager, secret server, which I'll show you in a second, I could type in my username and password, but I got to then authenticate on my phone using an enterprise Duo that the company installed on my phone and has a key. Okay.
Right, and Duo. So the more common second factor is the what's called a time-based one-time code, which is the 6-digit codes that you can type in. Commonly also known as Google Authenticator. Duo goes beyond that and actually sends you a push, which is from the user interface perspective, it's a lot more easier to just say, yes, that was me. And that's all we have to do. So your phone dings once and you tap on the notification and then that's done, your second factor. No typing in codes and no nothing else. So that's why we liked Duo. But it is a little more complicated to install.
Yeah, so you can enable two-factor on your email. You can enable it in your, my God, anywhere where it's allowed, we recommend doing it. If your bank supports it, and I think all banks do at this point, please enable it, right? That's probably, I mean, those are some of your most important passwords. And again, like Jamie said, he rests easy knowing that the second factor, it's going to be pretty darn hard to get to the second factor for Jamie's accounts, right?
Yeah, and I actually use LastPass personally. And on top of having the 2FA on important accounts, I also have 2FA for actually getting into my LastPass. Yeah. So even if you had my LastPass credentials, you can't get in because I still have to approve that login. So yeah, it's really 3 layers for the important stuff. So it's super hard to hack that stuff.
All right, so let me just show you really fast. So this was, oh, come on. So this is what LastPass looks like if I wanted to create a new password. I click a password and I say, yes, I want to create a new password. And if I'm typing in a password, so say I'm going to put in a password for, you know, facebook.com, right? And I'm going to say that, you know, the password is Pineda. And I'm going to type in a password, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And it's saying, oh, that's really, really bad. See the little red thing down here? But if I wanted to do, now it's turning green and telling me that, hey, that's a good password. And if I want to see it, that's my password. So I like that you can see the passwords. I'm obviously not going to save this because I obviously have a Facebook password.
Hey guys, just for clarification, are you suggesting that two-factor authentication used on any time, on any resources that's outside of your own network? Is that what you're suggesting?
That's what we're suggesting, right, Maki? Two-factor on everything, if it's available.
Well, again, you want to assess the risk versus the convenience, but so on an account that that doesn't hold any important information, maybe you can forego that. But whenever possible on important accounts, we highly recommend it.
So on WordPress, for example, the WordPress that Matrix uses, we have two-factor. So anytime I want to post anything to the blog, I gotta pull out the phone. So we just think it's important. Now, you're going to get some pushback from your staff because they're going to say, oh, it's so inconvenient. And as our IT department will say, security isn't convenient, but there are some things you can do to make it more convenient. So for example, because really the vast majority of my passwords are now in Lastpass, it's actually more convenient for me to log into these systems because it's in there, right? And because we have Duo and we've taken the time to implement Duo, it's actually more convenient to authenticate.
Yeah, thank goodness for those push requests.
Thank goodness.
You don't have to type anything in.
So Lastpass is available at the enterprise level. We happen to not use Lastpass. We use something called Secret Server from Thycotic, but Dashlane is also something that's available at the enterprise level. And again, at the enterprise level, you're going to pay a little bit more, but you're going to have things like different access levels, audit trails, etc. So this is what we like to use. Are there any more questions on password managers?
No, I think we're good. Just to clarify, LastPass, great for personal.
Yes.
LastPass, good for enterprise.
Yes.
Secret Server, only enterprise.
Correct.
Yeah, and just to add on about getting pushback for these things, if it is an inconvenience, well, it's going to be a tremendous inconvenience when one of your accounts gets compromised that, holds sensitive data. So.
Yeah, and it's inconvenient to have to go recover lost, passwords that are lost because the employee has moved on and whatever else, and that's just a hassle.
I cannot tell you how many clients have lost control of their DNS. Sometimes they don't even know where their website is hosted because the person who was managing it left, forgot. That wasn't part of the download before they went, and so it's like, Matrix, can you help me? We've lost access to our website. Don't let this happen to you. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is Slack. We have a lot of people who have asked about Slack. So what is Slack? Jaime.
Yeah, Slack is above all a messenger client. It's got a nice user interface. Pretty much does everything that you would expect a messenger app to do. I think above all, it's just the user friendliness. It has a mobile app. It has, the web experience is nice. There's a desktop application for whatever device you're on. And yeah, it has all sorts of fun stuff like emojis. You can react to people's, comments. You could do threading. It's really an advanced messenger application with a nice user interface, and it's really popular amongst all the tech giants. So it's a great app.
Not just tech giants. I mean, Fortune 500 companies apparently are implementing it. So it's cloud-based. It's like Jaime said, we love it. We've been using it now for 4 or 5 years, something like that, long time. And when we first implemented it, we were looking at it and I was reading an article, and the promise of Slack was that it would reduce emails. And I thought, really? Is that even possible? Like, is it really possible to reduce the emails? And I will tell you that it has absolutely reduced the internal emails that we have used. That we send out. It has also, I think, really sped up or promoted collaboration between staff members and between teams. So we'll just talk to you a little bit about Slack. Look at these stats: 8 million daily active users, 500,000 organizations using Slack. There is a free version of Slack, and that's the version that we started on. And we were on the free version of Slack for many, many years. And then as we really started incorporating it into our work, we said, you know what, it's time to pay up. So the paid version of Slack gives us additional features. Let's see. Gosh, I mean, we use it for everything, and I'll show that to you in a second.
We use it for phone calls now. Instead of picking up the phone, we just click on that phone icon, and because everyone has headsets, we just start talking.
Right.
that if we need to share a screen from that call, we can share screens. I mean, I don't even bother with scheduling Google Hangouts or Zoom meetings for an impromptu review. Yeah.
Yeah, so we use it for notifications. So we had a staff meeting this morning, and we have a general channel, which I'll show you in a second, where we say, hey, staff meeting is starting in 4 minutes. But we also have a channel for each functional group in the company. So the new biz team that I'm a member of, the front end team, the user experience team, the IT team, et cetera, they have their own channels, so they can be chatting. So for example, Jaime, what kind of stuff do you guys talk about in the UX channel?
Yeah, so that's a combination of front-end developers, designers, content people, and we focus on like user experience or user interfaces, best practices, or maybe there's like something that we heard in the news that came up and we want to discuss it with the team. That's a great place to to promote that information. And yeah, it's allows for a discussion around topics,
But you'll also post things like, I'm having trouble with blah on blah site. Who's got experience with this?
Yeah, or if I just generally have a user, experience question or somebody else does, they'll ask that channel, and people will weigh in if they're able to. So yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I'm going to show it to you guys. I've got my Slack here. So you'll see here, so this is my Slack. We actually skinned it so that it's got the matrix colors. It doesn't come out of the box like this. I'm not sure even what the colors are. And you can see here that I can send direct messages to different team members. But you can see here, up here, we've got different channels. So we've got a UX, user experience channel. We've got a water cooler channel. You see we've got a WEF channel here. That's one of our clients. So if I wanted to Slack Alex directly, then, then I can just start, sending a message to Alex. If I wanted to, oh, look here, I've got Jana. Jana's got a little icon, a house icon next to her name, and that's because she's working from home. So you can actually change her status. You can see here, Jamie Beck's got a phone number. She puts that in because in the afternoon she's working from home. The little green dot tells me that these people are online. If they don't have a dot, then it means they're not online. This looks like that it was a combination between a couple of people. So I can send a direct message to Leah, as well as Brian, right? And now I can start Slacking these folks. I can say, hey, JP, when are we going to discuss the webinar? And when they respond to me, I'm going to get a little number next to that combination of people. Now, you would think that getting all these notifications all day long might be distracting. So one of the things that Slack lets you do is actually control the notifications that you have. So Jamie doesn't have notifications turned on for every single channel. I only have notifications turned on for a couple of channels or when I'm specifically mentioned. If I wanted to, I could actually attach a file. So Alex, for example, I'll say, Alex, I need a graphic for X. And he'll just send it to me via Slack. It's in there, it's gone. And then, what we do with our Slack is we actually delete all the messages older than a week. So there's no archive. And so it's really just kind of a clean way to have these conversations. We just absolutely love it. We've actually done some interesting, integrations too. So like within Water Cooler, which is a channel, we have these company fundamentals. And if I do, bang fundamental, we are thorough and provide complete solutions. If I did it again, what we did is we basically, I don't even know who did this. I think Jana did this. We put in our fundamentals into Slack so that, one of the things that we do here at Matrix is we open every meeting with a fundamental. So if whoever's running the meeting, Jamie, Maki, or myself, we just want a fundamental, we just do it. Everything has a timeline. So if you're curious, why is that a fundamental? Because we often hear, oh, there's no timeline, there's no deadline, and we say everything has a timeline. It might be tomorrow, it might be in the next 5 minutes, it might be next year.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Another way that we use it is also just kind of as a news aggregator for a specific thing. So, for example, the UX channel, we get updates from a specific resource that we reference a lot for user experience things. So
Just
they
your
have
CSS tips and tricks?
Yeah, so they have an RSS feed, and you're able to use Slack as an RSS reader. Which is really nice. I love RSS. If you're not using RSS, it's a great way to stay up to date with a particular blog, resource, topic. Pretty much everything has an RSS feed. You could subscribe one channel to a particular RSS feed, or you could. There's something called Slackbot, which is kind of just something that's specific to you. So you could sign up for RSS on that channel. It's not really a channel. It's like a bot, It comes up as a person on your sidebar. So it's like your own little personal person to talk to.
It's a little personal assistant.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can tell Slackbot, for example, remind me at 11 a.m. to call Jaime. And at 11 a.m. it'll say, call Jaime.
Yeah, so you could subscribe to things in Slackbot, which will, act as an RSS reader, and that's what I use to subscribe to a lot of things. And I stay up to date that way. It's great.
Yeah, it's totally awesome. We do polling, company polling. There's a little Slackbot plugin that I use. We were trying to figure out what to do for a holiday party this year, and I did a little poll, and people responded. Is there a question?
Yeah, well, I think it's a little bit of a clarification. Slack has greatly reduced the number of emails that we send within the office, but maybe the better question is, when would you Slack versus when would you email, and what's consideration there?
So the question is, when do you use Slack and when do you use email? I'll tell you, for me, Slack is when it's immediate and I don't need a trail, right? So for example, if I'm sending, let's see, so in preparing for this webinar, I needed some slides done. I had changes to the slides. I had some folks that I wanted Brian to email, and I needed Renee to check on, blah, blah, blah. So I sent an email with instructions. I copied it to those folks, and I sent an email because that's probably going to take them, maybe they're not going to respond today, right? So if it's something that I don't need right away, plus I need a trail, and it's also going to be more than just a quick whatever, I'm going to send an email. That's my rule, and I think that's the rule that we kind of socialize here in the company. What's your rule, Jaime?
Well, one thing about Slack is that it's ephemeral, so nothing important should ever go into Slack.
Yes, really that's our rule.
Yeah. So it's really just kind of conversational or just kind of pinging someone real quick about whatever. But Joanna said, if you need a trail and you really want to try to document something a little bit more firmly, obviously email is the way to go for that. But yeah, everything on Slack is ephemeral, just kind of pinging each other. It's just a great tool for communication at a basic level as far as IM goes.
Maki, when do you use email and when do you use Slack?
That's a good one. I read a lot of email. I don't write that many emails, so I guess I must use a lot of Slack. Something that that comes to me that needs a lot more thought and review, I tend to do by email. Otherwise, I use if it's just like quick approvals. Actually, unless it's, of course, we need audit. We use I need to approve certain access, and we use Jira for that. So I have to jump out of Slack to go to Jira. But otherwise, it's like I do a lot of thumbs up icons on things because I see and I look at a lot of channels. I have a list of like 30 or some channels.
So we have a channel for every client, and I'm on a bunch of these channels, and I just read it. So for example, if I say, hey, well, I want to know what's going on with X client channel, I'm maybe not even actively working on that account. I just kind of want to know, because if you've worked with us, you know that I get involved with a whole lot of stuff where I just kind of lurk. I just go in and I see what's going on, and I can kind of get a flavor of, is this project going well? What are some of the bumps, that they're encountering, who's working on what. Now, Maria, you might have an interesting perspective on this. So Maria works full-time remote out of San Antonio, Texas. And how do you use Slack, and how do you find it for being remote?
It is the best. I mean, like I said, I've been here a really long time, and we've gone through a lot of different iterations of messengers. And for me, Slack is the best because I can create a custom group on the fly. So like, for example, when we were doing our office move, I was coordinating a lot of that, which is really difficult to do from 1,600 miles away. But we not only had our internal project, but we had our Slack channel for the primary people that were handling this. So I could go very in, and say, hey, Brian, did you talk to X person about Y? Or, hey, guys, we completed this thing. I'm going to go ahead and update the project. Things like that, where it's, kind of like I would have a really quick group conversation in person, but I can't do that. So I use Slack for that a lot. And then if it's something that turns out that I need to then, go into the project, I'll copy and paste the conversation into the project. But most of it is for things like that. Or I can say quickly, like on my team Slack, hey, I'm running away from the computer right now. I'm going to take lunch. John, can you keep an eye out on the incoming stuff? So, that way things don't fall through the cracks while I'm out. And I rely on that to know when, like, the folks in the office or the other folks on, on staff are away or on PTO or whatever. I'll look and see, do they have their green dot, or I can say, hey, can someone please go find so-and-so for me because we're about to do this call and I can't locate them.
So, the thing about Slack is when Maria Slacks me versus when Jaime Slacks me, I have no idea where they are. It's a Slack from a staff person. So I think it kind of levels the playing field in terms of communications, wouldn't you say, Maria?
Oh, absolutely.
And Maki, your IT meetings, you've got a remote staff, and Deb works remote on Fridays, and today you're home. I mean, like, you guys just use Slack all the time, right?
Mm-hmm. We do. Yeah, and we've always been like that. So.
Yeah.
And actually, just thought I'd mention just on a feature note, on rare occasions, if the launch is large enough, we've actually we've invited clients to be on a channel.
Right.
That's possible.
Yeah, that's actually been hugely important when we do launches. Sometimes we'll do launches late at night, and so what'll happen is, everyone just kind of will say, get on this Slack channel, and you kind of see everything that's going on. So for those of you who don't have launches late at night, you might say, we're going to set up a Slack channel for the annual conference, and stuff going on with the annual conference, or as people have questions, they need stuff. So one thing you can do is, if you've got a channel and you've got a whole lot of people on it, you can @mention someone. You can say @mention Brian Clark, and everybody can see that communication, but Brian will get a specific ping. So for those of you that have Office 365, it's going to be Skype, right? That allows you to do some of the stuff, and I guess Teams lets you do some of the stuff. We happen to just use, Slack, and we absolutely love it. And I will say this, we actually did a webinar on just Slack. Slack itself is a technology platform, but in order to make it work for you, you've got to have governance around it. So on a regular basis, we talk about how do we use Slack as a company, and what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and we'll kind of share those so that then Slack works for us. Any other questions, Brian? Okay.
Oh, we've got another 15 minutes, so I hope we have some more tools.
Yeah, no, we do. So one thing that I want to talk about next is, we said that, increasingly folks are working remotely, and here at Matrix Group, actually a quarter of our staff is now full-time remote. So we got people in Pennsylvania, we got people in Texas, Nevada, California, all over the place. And so I think there are challenges to being remote and to working with a remote staff, but there are two things that I think make a big difference here. One of them is Slack, and the other one is Zoom, which we are using right now. So Maria, how important is Zoom to you?
I think it's great. It just beats what we used to use, such as WebEx. Zoom is a lot more flexible. I can see people. I like using the video. We can see who's online. And, we can do a lot of different things. It's really, really easy to connect.
Yeah, so I think, for those of you that have remote staff, we've really tried to take advantage of using video, right? So that for the team members that are remote, instead of them being a disembodied voice on the phone, they're actually a person. So we're in this conference room, you guys can see, and up on the screen are the people who have their video turned on. And some of you later on, when we're doing Q&A, we can have the video turned on and you can see how it works. I think that's been hugely important. So, all right, let's see, what else do we have? Okay, so we want to talk a little bit about just managing documents in the cloud. So we are using Google Drive, we actually got rid of our file server, right, Maki? So like, poof, no more file server. Everything is in the cloud. We are using Google Drive. And what we love about it is it's, well, first of all, central location. And Maria, in the past, if you wanted to access documents, you have to go into the VPN. There was latency, uploading and downloading documents.
Yeah.
And now they're really,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say one of the issues that we used to have the remote staff with using the file server was often the latency, and then stuff would like drop out in the middle, like if I was trying to access a particularly large document or file. And with Google Docs, it just made it 99.9% better because we have our different groups. We can decide who has access to each of the groups. It's owned by matrix, so like not one person owns the file, and it's collaborative. Like if you've ever used Google Docs, it's the same thing with the shared drives. So I can open up a document, and Leah can be in that document, Joanna can be in that document, and we're all working on it at the same time instead of having to email back and forth files. And then, something were, to happen, because we had used my drive in the past, but if we keep everything on the shared, so if something were needed when I'm out, anybody can access that document as long as they have access to that group.
Yeah, here at Matrix Group, our policy is if it's a company document, it goes in a shared drive. And you can see here, we've really been thoughtful and intentional about our directories. So we've got admin, we've got clients, design, and every single client has a client folder, and every single client folder has a contracts folder, a proposals folder, and a projects folder. So if we're doing a redesign for you, there's a folder that's got the assets for that project. And if you've done a redesign with us, you know that there's a persona doc, there's a goals doc, there's a spec doc, there's a whatever. All of those things are there. So if Jaime says, hey, where's the persona doc that we did for X client? You can go into clients, actually look, and for all the projects that we've done, if we've done 3 redesigns for you, we're going to find those. So it just means that it's easier for us. It also means that so many more folks in the organization have access to this. So like anything else, Google Drive is a tool, but we've developed a set of governance around these tools that make it work for us. We actually say do not, unless it's really something that you don't, that is either personal, in which case it doesn't belong here. But we almost say never use the My Drive, because then the search won't work as well and people don't have access to it. If it's in one of these directories, you can see here, prospects, software, security and compliance, templates, etc., then it means that Maria has access because she's an administrator. OneDrive works like this, right? And hopefully you've set up your OneDrive to have some type of a structure, and you've really trained your staff to do collaboration. Brian, I don't think you and I are ever going back to non-collaboration on a proposal.
Just audit anything at this point.
On anything, actually.
Just a simple message or some simple note that we're working on. It's just great to be able to collaboratively work and not have to deal with versions, et cetera.
Oh my God, just the slides that we're working on. So, where Maki and Tanya are doing a presentation at ASAE Tech on tech debt, and I was helping out with the slides. And so Maki was in the slides, Tanya was in the slides, I was in the slides, Alex was in the slides, making them look pretty. Before, we would have had to pass those slides around, 15 meg files with, multiple copies, and now there's one kind of source of truth, and it's totally awesome.
A quick slide F5, you're refreshed, and
I'll say, Brian, I need this. No problem, I got it. So it's totally awesome. Anyone have any questions on that? Hopefully you all are really using, these documents in the cloud and these shared docs.
Looking pretty good.
Okay.
It's good info.
Yeah, to kind of go full circle, there's a Google Docs integration for Slack. So for example, if somebody mentions me or assigns something to me in a document,
Yes.
Slackbot will let me know. So that's cool.
It's totally awesome.
And that's something that you just kind of install as an add-on. There's many add-ons for Slack. You just search for the Google Documents add-on, you install it, and that's it.
Yeah, totally awesome. So if I'm working on a proposal and I'll say, at Jaime Q, I have a question, did I describe this properly? Or what do you think is the best way for doing this? It's in the document. He would normally get an email, but this time he gets a Slack.
Yeah.
She probably gets both.
Yeah, I get both, but the Slack is more immediate if I'm working. So I could see it and just click on the notification. It'll take me right to the document and just I can respond.
Yeah, awesome. So here are some of the tools that we have for connecting with remote staff: Slack, Zoom Meeting, Google Drive, Trello, and then we wanted to show you Zoiper. So Zoiper is kind of interesting, and this doesn't have to be, what you all implement, but when we moved into this office, we asked a simple question: who would like an office phone? And it was a surprising few number of people who actually said, I want an office phone. Jaime, you were not one of them.
No.
You said, no thanks. Now, why did you refuse an office phone?
Well, I didn't refuse. I just didn't say I want a phone.
Right.
I typically am not on the phone.
Right.
And for any kind of verbal communications that are needed, Google Meet and Slack have really worked out well so far.
Right. So we saved the cost of a phone, right? Because
The handset.
the handset, right. So, and Brian, because in our new office, you could be at your desk, in a conference room, out in the common area, or even at home, Zoiper allows us to give you an extension and we reach you everywhere.
Yeah, it's fabulous. I mean, if I obviously I have my phone muted at the moment, but if I had a phone call right now, I could easily answer it, walk out of the room, and continue on as business as usual. I'm at the shop getting my car repaired. If I'm at home, my whole office is with me. The only things I need to carry with me are my laptop, my power supply, my mouse, and my headset.
Although Ray actually connects it to his cell phone.
Yeah.
So he
I
can
might be
actually,
inaccessible.
Yeah.
But
Right. Well, he's a sales guy, and so are you. So we're highly accessible. So this is just one of a class of software that basically connects to your voice over IP system and allows people to have an extension, and then instead of having a handset, their computer and maybe a set of headphones are actually how they're making phone calls. So Maria is actually making this call through Zoiper, right, and dialing into the Zoom line, and then she's using a headset. So this is another way that we've kind of made this new way of working work for us, because it was one of those, you're working from home, I don't have your number, but I know Brian's extension by heart. He's through 3016. That's all I ever need to remember.
yeah, really, it's just removed the constraints. We have the option of working how you want to work, where you want to work.
Exactly. And then Jaime just wanted to say, hey, since we're talking tech tools, he's using a browser I've never heard of.
Yeah, so this browser called Brave is something that I started using. It's not totally new. It's been around maybe a couple years, but it's relatively new. A lot of people don't know about it. It's a great browser. I strongly recommend. Well, why did I switch to using it? One thing, it does a lot of great security work. One thing that it does is that it blocks out a lot of third-party scripts from interfering with your browsing. So it'll block like third-party ads and like trackers and stuff like that. So I felt it also has made the browser feel faster. I come from using Chrome, and the one thing that you will notice about Brave is that it's built. Well, you won't notice, but it's built on the same technologies as Chrome. So at least the user interface and the experience of using it will be very similar, if not the same, to using Chrome. And you're able to import all your data from Chrome into this, like your history of browsing and your data, stuff like that. It's really a great browser. It's been nothing but positive feedback from me so far. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to shout it out. A lot of people don't know about it. It's a great browser.
Maki, do you know about Brave?
I did not know about Brave.
Wow.
Hey, Jaime, is it a case where a Brave, like if I'm just an average Joe Chrome user, do you suggest Brave for somebody like me that's not...
I strongly recommend Brave. Like I say, they do a lot of security things, and I also find that the usage is the same as Chrome, but also I feel like it's less CPU intensive, because a lot of the times if you have like too much going on in Chrome, maybe some of you can relate. You'll start to hear your fan and your laptop spin.
Yes.
It's because Chrome is very CPU intensive. It's gotten bad. They're getting better at it with the more latest releases, but it gets up there sometimes. Brave, I haven't had that problem so far, and I do pretty much I have a lot of windows open, tabs open. I do a lot, so it's been great so far.
Okay, so when I look at Google Analytics, you're going to be like the Brave user. Right? It's going to show, when it shows all the browsers, it's going to be
actually,
like
my browser will be blocking your
That's
third party.
true, you're right. You're going to be blocking Google Analytics.
Yeah,
okay,
so
well,
So by being more secure, you're creating more work for yourself, because we need to collect that data.
Yeah, and actually, can you just navigate to any site, JP?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, grains.org. So, wait, this is Chrome. I'm sorry, I thought you were in Brave.
No,
Never
I'm not
mind.
in Brave, I'm in Chrome.
So one
But
thing that
anyway.
you will notice in Brave is that by default, like I said, it will block third-party trackers and scripts and stuff like that. So it's a lot more private. But also that tends to block out certain functionality. And if you find that something's not working correctly, at the very top next to the address bar, it'll give you an on-off for blocking third-party scripts for this particular site. So you can allow and disallow that. But by default, it blocks everything, and it makes the user experience a little better, I think.
So for our clients that have Google Analytics and Crazy Egg and this and that, it's going to block it.
Yeah.
Okay, so not terrific for marketers, but good for security.
Yeah.
All right. Well, fair enough. It's always a balance, right? So we got time for questions, and we got time for people who want to share a tech tool that they're using or that they want to share with some other folks, or if you've got a question. So what do we got, Brian?
Let me ask a quick question, and if anyone actually wants to join, we set up this meeting in this particular way where I think you have the capability of unmuting yourself. So if you do want to have a quick conversation.
*6, right?
Or unmute.
You can just unmute yourself in.
Alt-A.
Okay, thank you.
But getting back to governance and policies and so forth, obviously we're a tech firm and we put our own governance and policies in place. The question is, do we have a template or suggestions as far as implementing policies for our clients? Do we have any suggestions? How would we go about that if anyone wanted assistance?
No, that's a really good question. We will happily share what we have in the way of governance and rules for any of these tools. So if you've got a question, send them to me, Pineda at Matrix Group, and no charge, I'll share with you what we've got, right? It may or may not be as detailed as you need it to be. We tend to be a little bit sparse on the details, just because we're always talking about these rules. So, but if you've got questions about, hey, how are you making sure that Slack works for you, that there are no security incidents through Slack, or that people aren't, wasting time on Slack, happy to share that. Happy to share our work from home policy, because that's something that's been very, very successful for us. Jaime, you work from home on a regular basis. We call them focus days or just work from home. So what else we got? Anybody else got questions? Anybody want to share a tech tool or a tip? Anybody? No?
It's that time we're really close to launch.
This is Sam Evans, and I work, my entire team is distributed in various places. We don't actually have a physical office. So we have transitioned away from Skype for internal to Microsoft Teams, and we found the audio quality seems to be a good bit better on calls than Skype was. We were not using Skype for business as it integrated in. So, but I do use the Slack channels for my volunteers that do a lot of work on our certification programs, and it's been a great way to eliminate that void of threaded emails or scrolling through dozens and dozens of pages. And it actually allows, since all my volunteers are around the world, for them to interact in their own time zone and not try to make meetings that sometimes isn't possible. So the Slack channels and I also have a general for my volunteers. So it's separate from my company Slack. So I have one account that's free for my volunteers for each project so that they're not getting mixed up with everybody else and the dozens and dozens of volunteers. So it's really nice. It's been a really great way to help my volunteers feel more connected to one another. And our staff is small, we're 5. So, but I can imagine in a group your size it's helpful, but I find it most useful in volunteer engagement and collaborative work tools, that you can actually work on collaborative documents in Slack together and see the notes and retain that kind of editing notes. So.
Boy, that's good to know. I know of at least a couple of organizations that have, for their committees, and Sam, it sounds like that's what you've done, have actually created Slack channels for the committees. So a Slack channel for the board. They still get the board packets and they still get the emails, but there's also a Slack channel for kind of, in between meeting communications. Thank you. Anyone else got something that they want to share? So we've got another Slack fan and we've got a Teams fan over here. Anybody else? Okay, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, well, I want to thank you all for joining us. If you found this helpful, send us an email because then maybe we'll do it again, right? And if you've got some tools that you think we should be discussing, send that along as well. This isn't necessarily directly related to the work that we do of, helping organizations with their digital strategy and creating amazing member journeys. But we feel like in the process of doing that, it's good to know about the tools and it's good to know about the governance. So, and we're always happy to share. So, and with that, I guess we'll all wave goodbye and say thank you so much. And you'll get a copy of the slides and the recordings, and go be productive online. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.